Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. Remember that one time where we said that the last episode was going to be the last episode of the year? Just kidding. It's going to be this one. This is the last episode of the year. There is definitely a ton of Nashville SC news that has come out in the past 2 weeks, which is absolutely mind-boggling. Remember that one time we were like, hey, let's see if anything happens. It all happened in the past 2 weeks.
I honestly feel like this show should almost start with a flashback because I feel like on the last episode, what I specifically said is I just needed Nashville to make one signing that would possibly get me a little bit excited. And like less than a week later, they signed the MLS Cup MVP. Like insane. But the weirdest thing about it, right, is so like this is a new look Pharma soccer. Like we were thinking the first time people were probably going to see the new logo, the new look, and all this stuff was going to be with our new episode in the new year. Turns out you're getting it early, folks. Like,
Yeah, it's really, and we kind of just need to do it. I mean, it was either that or we're going to go another 2 weeks without recording an episode, and then three more things will happen, and then we will have a 2 hour episode, which I know Valaire definitely does not have time for a 2 hour episode.
I do not have time for 3 hour episode. What I do want to say is that we think this is our last episode of the year.
fair point. Fair point.
Got a point. You never know what's going to happen on New
That
Year's
story
Eve.
out about Cristiano Ronaldo,
I
like
know.
theory.
I think we
Like,
should
if
keep
we
our
were live
options
in
up
Nashville, we'd have
open.
to have a podcast tomorrow about it.
Yeah, it's like either that or normally we would have like our hey, what's our Nashville SC New Year's resolution episode? What do we want that but we can't do that because there's so many things to talk about. But first, let's get into our holidays. Valaire, how was your holiday time in Michigan? Did you have a good one?
It was beautiful, man. It was good. Got to see my family. As beautiful as hanging out with everyone is, and a little hectic. All the nephews and nieces and all that, and yeah, I had to have gained like at least 20 pounds in the couple weeks I was there. So really good from that perspective. Really bad for my health, but what can you do? You got to enjoy some of this time. All in all, enjoyed my time there. Back home now, back to the grind. Yeah, just got back Sunday, so really we're recording on Monday, so yeah, haven't spent a whole lot of time home yet.
What for the past 2 weeks for you, what were like the messages like? Were you like, I would like to breathe, please, and then the next news thing would happen just as like you were doing something with family?
Well, it's funny because like the Shaq Moore stuff, which I know we're gonna get into, like I was looking through some stuff and I had heard about it the day before that it was gonna happen or that somebody thinks is gonna happen, but I just assumed it was gonna be after the holidays. I just figured it's gonna be after Christmas at least. And the like literally right before it happened, I was scrolling through my phone and I was like, all right, never mind. Like, I don't think this is happening anytime soon. So I put my phone down, I get my food ready, and as I sit down, I get my phone lights up, and I'm like, oh, what now? And it's like Nashville SC traded Shaq Moore. I'm like, are you serious? I haven't even taken a bite of the food. So now I'm like, okay, I gotta get this out real quick. But then obviously like you can't just like put out a thing that says like this happened. I gotta give them like a little bit of information. I gotta give them some analysis, you know what I mean? So it's like,
You
I
got to
don't know.
give the people what they want.
The whole lunch was like, a little ruined, but all in all, it was it was constant and it was just like a thing after another, especially that one day. I want to say it was Friday or Thursday last week where it was like thing after thing was happening. So, no, I mean, you can't complain about this stuff. It happens. So, as Clay has been saying, he was looking forward to it. So, even though it took me away from my food, I still appreciate it, I guess.
Clay, how was your holiday time?
It was good. It was good. I actually spent an entire Christmas in Evansville, which hasn't happened in quite a while for a variety of reasons. Not the most positive in some of those years, but the one thing that I think the people on this show would appreciate the most is my wife, not much of a gambler, not much of a casino person, but we stay at the casino in Evansville every time that we go home because it's an okay hotel that's cheaper than like going to Holiday Inn. as you guys know. And, the casino is pretty dead on Christmas Eve. And we come back from lunch on Christmas Day at my parents' house, and it was packed. Everyone was spending their Christmas money at the casino in Evansville. And my wife and I just kind of walked through it on the way to the room, and she goes, it seems really sad in here. And I was like, well, you're in a casino on Christmas Day in Evansville. If you're at a casino at 2 p.m. on Christmas Day, chances are life hasn't totally worked out the way you planned. So
Unless you're
maybe
winning.
that's part of
I
it,
mean,
but
I don't know. It didn't sound, I mean, yes. Yeah, that's
it,
fair.
but yeah, it was fun. We had a good time in Evansville, had some good food, made some good food, made some creme brulee. Got the sous vide going. I got a new flamethrower that I use with my sous vide, so got to use that, which my little nephew very much enjoyed. So good Christmas, and on the whole Shaq Moore thing, like we we have made it's become a meme that like Nashville is going to do something wild, right? That's unexpected, kind of out of the blue at during this time of year. And it started with Alistair Johnston when we did that, when that happened when I was in Evansville. And there's the Dave Romney, and now there's Shaq Moore. It's just kind of this out of the blue, massive move. And we're just kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like a New England Patriots thing, like back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Except they had like won titles and were successful. But it's the same like kind of vibe.
I mean, and I yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I had a good holiday week as well. Of course,
Did
my
you go to
Christmas.
Michigan?
I did not. No. I did my Christmas
Just the weather
tradition of
there.
watching Lord of the Rings extended versions all the way through. Started it at 9 in the morning, was done by like 10:30. Always a good time. Always a fun tradition that I started for myself. It was really fun to just like be, relaxing and still in like a relaxing type of mode, and then just pick up your phone and, oh, well, this happened. How do I react? What do I do? Like it's just I'm supposed to be relaxing right now, not necessarily stressing out about what my team is going to be doing in the future. Oh, which by the way, while this was all happening, schedules got released. Like that's normally the big news ticker. It was just the bottom of the barrel when it came to the news of what has happened is the schedule being released, which is absolutely wild to me.
Yeah. The schedule usually gets like a whole week, I feel like, of fans planning out travel or looking forward to certain days. But yeah, it was kind of overshadowed immediately by some big news. But we'll talk about it here. I mean, the thing that looks different for MLS is that they listened, it seems like Apple at least listened to how the schedule is structured and how it was so difficult to watch this league outside of your team because most of the games happen at the same time. So if you go watch Nashville SC or Real Salt Lake or whoever your team is, you probably can't catch any other games or very rarely can catch other games. So it seems like MLS looked at that and Apple looked at that and decided to do something about it. So starting 2025, there will be a Sunday night game now. There's a good collection of teams that are going to have those Sunday night games. I mean, obviously, it's geared towards sort of the bigger markets, but the smaller markets are still getting a share of it. There will be a specific like studio show for the Sunday night game. So it's like a whole ordeal that Apple's putting together for it, and I think it's about time MLS does something like that, and I think it's a good move altogether. The other thing is that there are different Saturday afternoon slots going into 2025. So, before you go to your Nashville SC match that you're gonna watch, you get to watch maybe a game or two, then head to the stadium. And that's something they did a little bit in 2024, and I always enjoyed it because I'd be getting ready for the Nashville match, doing my prep or whatever, and would have MLS on TV, which made it like a whole day ordeal, which I do think is kind of where they need to go. So positive moves, I think, in terms of the schedule league wide.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see them listen. I do wish that there would be more afternoon games. I think there's only one home Saturday afternoon game that Nashville has, and I know that that is a complaint I've heard among people in the city, especially those with kids and people that maybe have to drive in an hour or two for games, having a few more afternoon games kind of opens things up. Ultimately, this is really the what the core issue is that the majority of people that watch the MLS like games, that watch MLS teams and whatnot, kind of only watch their local team. Which there are certainly weeks where Steven and I are way more guilty of that than Valer is. But like, and MLS teams have learned that their best attendance is on a Saturday night. And so you've got a league trying to navigate TV or streaming in this case, where the national streaming audience wants to have multiple choices versus the home market, which has shown through ticket sales and through attendance that they want to be there on a Saturday night. And it's always been a problem for the league. And because there isn't that large interest outside of the league to kind of tell the home stadiums to like suck it up and deal with it, this is your window. It's caused this issue where the people that are in it want to see multiple game windows on a Saturday, but most people who follow these teams are just following the local team, and they've kind of shown with their wallet that they want the games on a Saturday night. And I hope that maybe continued interest, maybe opening it up, maybe giving a few different options to these fans will kind of say, oh, like it was nice to have that Saturday afternoon game. And then you take that into what you hope will be an interest boost going into the World Cup in 2026. And maybe you can really expand it out into having these TV windows the same way that you would see with an NFL or even in Major League Baseball and NBA on those particular calendar days of the year where they say this game's at 1, this game's at 4, this game's at 7. That's what I'm hoping for. But like, it was always going to be the majority of the games were going to be on Saturday night.
Yeah, and I mean, there's even a couple games on Friday as well. I think Nashville plays on a Friday in San Diego as well. But I kind of just want to give, from a Nashville perspective, just kind of give the highlights of the schedule, and then I want you two to be thinking about like if there's a match that you guys are excited for. Nashville starts at home against the Revolution on the 22nd of February, about a week earlier than last year starting. We get decision day at home against Inter Miami. I'm surprised that they gave Inter Miami an away game for decision day, but I'll take that as it is. 7 games in May, which is absolutely wild, in my opinion. I That's so much soccer in 1 month. A full away schedule in June. Plus, we get a lot of fun other matches. We haven't been to St. Louis before for a match, so we finally get to be there, and we get an away trip to San Diego, which is a lot of fun. Also, 3 of our games will be nationally televised, which is also something fun for Nashville to see when it comes to that. Is there any matches that kind of stick out to you both when it comes to ones that you're excited for?
I would say the away ones, like you mentioned, especially the Western Conference ones, those are on rotation. You only get 6 Western Conference teams. Only 3 of those are away from home each year. Obviously, Nashville played a year in the Western Conference, so if you were around back then, you probably saw a lot of these matchups. But generally speaking, you don't get these matchups often. So if you can make an away trip to the Western teams, that would be something I would recommend. But for me, St. Louis is a city I'm very familiar with, and I actually have been to a game there in their MLS stadium, and it's absolutely must see, drivable distance. Highly recommend going. San Diego, I've been to twice in the last 2 years. Um, Literally half of my family lives there. I have a lot of people I know there, but also it's just a beautiful city. Weather is amazing, and I've never been to Snapdragon Stadium, but I'm gonna try to make it. Probably not gonna happen, but we're gonna try to make it this year, this upcoming year. But I highly recommend those two. And I can't remember the third away Western Conference team, but try to make that one as well because those don't come often. We don't know when it was the next time Nashville SC will have St. Louis or San Diego away from home.
Clay, anything that you're excited about this year?
Well, I mean, it's kind of played out to say it, but like for me, obviously, Atlanta away is always a good time. It's an afternoon game, which is great. Looking forward to that. We have family down there, so that's a good one. And then I Cincinnati, I used to live in that area. and I was trying to find the other West Coast or the
It's
other West
Seattle. It's Seattle. I just
Seattle.
saw.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Seattle is a great away trip. I've been to I think three matches in Seattle. One was a Nashville game for the season opener, which I think Steven was there. Valer, were you there for that?
No, no, I
Yeah.
haven't
So
been to Seattle.
Seattle's a great. Oh yeah, of course you weren't there because it was a win by Nashville. So if all three of us were there, it would have been a draw. But I think that's always a good one. I really do like wish that there was Portland away this year because I that is still one that I haven't made and that just hasn't worked out well. And that sort of goes into the whole you never know how the schedule is going to shake out. I imagine I'll be going to St. Louis. That's a pretty easy one, and I can go home for a day or so and then drive over to St. Louis because it's not too bad a drive. So, but honestly, at this point, like I've been to most of the stadiums in MLS, and you travel a little bit less when you get married. And so I haven't gone to nearly as many road games as I used to when we first started this show, where I went to almost all of them. So, so I mean, a fun one would be genuinely, it's an afternoon game at Philadelphia in Chester, Pennsylvania, the scene of the crime from the 2021 MLS Cup playoffs.
All three of us were there. So
Yeah,
Well,
the saddest I've ever seen Valer Shabilla
well,
was
it
was the penalties of that game.
it is one of the things now that I've been here in this DC area for a little bit. I now understand how easy it is to travel to places like Philadelphia in New York via train. So I do plan on taking my first trip to Red Bulls as well, starting the season. So I will be doing that. There's also one other thing I am so excited about, and this is the first year that it's happened in the past 4 years or whatever, 3 years. Montreal is on a weekend. Montreal away is on a
Oh,
weekend for the first time.
yeah, that's a good shout. I had to cancel that trip a few years ago. That's a great one.
it's
Yeah,
crazy that's taken this long to get Montreal away on a weekend,
I
considering
know.
they're in the
It's
same
like I
conference.
get excited about it every single year since we've been in the East, and then it's been like, oh, never mind, I can't go to Montreal.
Um, Another quick thing because you mentioned it, I will say this, and this is me being history nerd, and so I'm just gonna own it. But well, it's not Red Bull Arena anymore. They changed the name, didn't they?
Sports Illustrated Arena.
Yeah,
Or
Sports Illustrated
the ticket department of Sports Illustrated. Let's just be clear.
Arena. Yeah.
This is a very broke boy
Corporate
mentality
America,
here.
what is happening
Yeah.
here?
So anyway, Harrison, New Jersey, in that area, is one of the most historic, most relevant soccer areas in the entire United States. It's where the first international match outside of the UK took place, was just literally blocks away from that arena. There's a lot of soccer history in that area, and there are people that will talk to you about it and show you these places. There's a lot of national team players that came out of that area from a good era, and I just want to say, like, it's depressing that they don't really build the Red Bulls around that identity and they try to attach it on New York when you could easily build it around the identity of that area for the sport, because that area, like Kearney, Harrison, Newark, has just as much soccer history as St. Louis, and St. Louis loves telling you how much soccer history they have. So it's just really unfortunate, I think, to have that sort of history around that team, especially after they made the run to MLS Cup final. Like, I really wish they'd lean into it. But if you're someone who likes the historical stuff, there are things to see in that area. And I mean, the last time that I was up there, I was watching England play Scotland at a bar that was over 100 years old. And me and friend of the show, Tony, were just like feet away from John Harkes' dad watching Scotland play. So, like, a lot of those folks' families still live in that neighborhood. So, anyway, just shout out that road trip. Is like, that stadium and atmosphere is not great, but there's some cool stuff going on in that area.
Look, stadium in the match, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's going to be a nil-nil draw if anything says what
People don't go
Nashville is
to
going to
Inter
be.
Miami games for the stadium. Like, they go to Inter Miami game. Well, now they go for Messi, but
I
people
have
are going
heard
down there
though.
because it's Miami,
I
not
have heard Red
Lauderdale.
Bull Arena is a nice stadium. So
Great,
a
yeah.
stadium in itself, but not the
I am
Most of
excited.
course.
I
the
am
it's
excited to
great.
do it. Also, I'm just saying June 28th, if you guys want to be my friends and actually come visit me, it would be cool. But that's on you guys. You let me know if you want to do that or
I
not.
think Valer and I have something that day. Sorry.
I might actually not be in the country, to be honest with you, but I will try to make it.
Look, we could probably continue to talk about the schedule, but we have so many other things that we need to talk about, and we're going to do that next right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also see our Patreon as well. We do have a Patreon. $5 a month really does help keep the show going. So please make sure you check that out. Also, if you go to pharmasoccer.com, you're going to see a nice new look to everything. New website, a new logo that we put together that Clay actually put together. So shout out Clay for putting that together. Yeah, we wanted to do a nice little rebrand for the start of the new year, new Pharma. So yeah, go check that out. And we actually have some merch as well. So please make sure you go check that out at pharmasoccer.com. First time ever actually having some merchandise. So please check that out. I think it's great, in all honesty.
Yes, thank you for all the Patreon support and all the support throughout the years. We try to use it for a good use, and this was one of the uses, but there are many other uses. So continue to support us on Patreon because we really appreciate it.
So I think normally you'd probably just pick and choose, like, oh, this is the biggest thing that has happened, and we, spend most of the time talking about that. But over the past 2 weeks, or the last time we recorded, I think it's probably best that we go over everything chronologically. Because we haven't had, like, us as a show, as a prep, haven't even had time to discuss how we feel about this stuff internally, because it's
I
just
think they're
been
all
one after
related,
another.
and they're all related.
Yeah.
Like everything has, like the things that have happened are related to the first thing that happened.
Right. So I'll start off with like, it was one of the first things that happened after the episode was released was the MLS has decided. I don't know if it's MLS giving this visibility, or is
Yeah.
it something that it is or is it, I didn't know if it was something the MLSPA wanted to have happen. Okay. MLS had been given visibility on the GAM numbers specifically, and it did not necessarily make Nashville fans extremely optimistic about what we could do in the offseason. Blair, do you kind of want to go into that?
Yeah, so essentially what they released was the GAM that currently each team has. That doesn't really tell the full story. That's just a piece of information that you can take and um, decide certain things based on how much available GAM each team has. Nashville had very low compared to the other teams and was in the bottom sort of percentage in terms of GAM available. That said, again, it's not the full story, meaning we don't know how this GAM is being used. First and foremost, that would be the biggest indicator. That would be the next thing that people are asking MLS for, probably. But this is a huge step in itself because folks have been asking MLS to do this since day one, pretty much, that GAM was available. And MLS just has never put these numbers out. So now you kind of get an idea of what these teams are up to. Another thing that this information is missing is the sort of designation of where the GAM is going to, in terms of this is going down to pay down a DP to make him a TAM. It doesn't talk about TAM at all, which is targeted allocation money. So there are some missing pieces, but based on what we have been given information wise, we can get some at least a good picture of what Nashville and other teams have in their budgets.
It's also worth noting that it kind of, while it was a little bit surprising to a lot of people how little GAM that Nashville had, it kind of reframes the last few years of dealing in a different light. I think a lot of people were operating under the assumption that Nashville just loves to get GAM. And I think it kind of shows that Nashville actually needed to get GAM, which does make sense if you think about it, because Nashville had the fourth highest payroll in the league. One of the things that you can use GAM for is buying down salaries to get them under the salary threshold. Nashville is a veteran team, which means that those players were making more than a lot of other similar players by nature of being veterans and being proven or seemingly proven in the league. So it would make sense that Nashville would have to spend a lot of GAM, which does reframe a lot of the decisions that Nashville's made around GAM specifically in the last few years. So while it was on the surface kind of surprising how little GAM that Nashville had around, once you like kind of peeled it back a little bit, it's like, well, Dax McCarty wasn't a cheap player, and that probably cost a good amount of GAM for a while. Walker Zimmerman wasn't always a DP, and that probably cost a good amount of GAM. So, like, these are different moves that can eat up significant portions of that GAM. And so they were having to deal to get it, to make the roster work, to stay within the rules, unless they just change everything and make it work like they did for Miami. But we'll just put that aside over there. I do think, like, once you saw that, you kind of were like, all right, so Nashville's about to be doing some dealing over these next few weeks to build that GAM bank back up, but also to like kind of get in a spot where they can move pieces around a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I think from the outside looking in, all those numbers, what Nashville had to do to be under the roster rules, you still expected Nashville to perform better in those ways. And I think that's what was very disappointing to be like, oh, you would think a team that doesn't have this money to spend GAM, doesn't have this GAM, would actually be in a better spot positionally in the past 2 years. I mean, one of the teams under Nashville and the amount of GAM they had was the Galaxy. And for them, it's fine because they won a championship with it.
Eh,
But Nashville needed to make some deals and do some things to kind of increase that, and they started doing that with their first kind of trade for Lucas McNaughton.
Yeah. So Nashville SC acquired up to 200,000 in GAM from DC United in exchange of Lucas McNaughton. Now Lucas McNaughton had been with Nashville SC for about 2.5 years, I want to say, or maybe 1.5 years, and he was loved by fans. I think a lot of fans really loved him, loved the way he played. He came into that lineup and he wasn't supposed to be a starter. He wasn't supposed to be this big name or anything, and took the starting job pretty quickly and became a fan favorite pretty quickly. I think when you look at somebody like Jack Mayer, that was his closest competition, and Lucas McNaughton was doing it for $110,000 a year, while Jack Mayer was at 700,000 plus. So just to showcase how good his contract was. That said, that contract would have run out at the end of 2025, meaning that they would have to pay him more going forward. Let's not forget that Lucas McNaughton went through a really, really tough injury that showed him sidelined for most of the last season. So there's no telling what this 29-year-old will come back to. This is a ruthless business. This is not a business to make friends in. And I don't think Nashville or DC or any of these teams are here to make friends. So when an opportunity comes in and a team is offering you this much GAM, you have to take it for a player who's at that age, who's recovering from a long-term injury, who hasn't really played, and you don't know how he's going to perform.
And it's also worth noting that like Lucas McNaughton at times has won the starting role over Jack Mayer, but there have been several times where Mayer's taken it right back. And all things being equal, the way that Nashville envisions their center backs is probably Walker Zimmerman, Jack Mayer, Lucas McNaughton, and then Bauer right below him. And when they gave Josh Bauer the extension, it kind of gave you a clue off that like if you're Bauer and you're fourth choice center back, why would you be signing an extension when you've proven that you can start in the league? And so I think like that sort of signaled that maybe Nashville was looking. I mean, we talked about it on here about McNaughton being left unprotected, but they protected him specifically to do this move to get him to DC United and get a little bit more back than letting him go in the expansion draft. So it all makes sense why they would do it the way they did it. I'm sure Nashville would have loved if someone just picked up Mayer in the expansion draft and they saved money that way and keep McNaughton, but Mayer's younger. And all things being equal, that is who Nashville would project as their number two center back, not the 29-year-old McNaughton coming off a major injury.
And I do want to note that this was a really shrewd business getting McNaughton to Nashville. So right. McNaughton came to Nashville on a trade to Toronto by getting McNaughton and 150,000, I think, in GAM in exchange of CJ Sapong, who was unable to score for Nashville SC for the longest time, and career kind of went away after he was traded to Toronto. So this in itself is huge for a player who really no one around the league thought was going to be a difference maker. Came in, played incredible for Nashville SC. I think he had made 34 appearances, and every single one of those, I thought Lucas McNaughton looked good. So to get all this GAM and to get 34 really good performances from Lucas McNaughton, and then to get Morgan to trade him away is not a bad deal. Obviously, if day one Walker Zimmerman gets injured, then everybody's like, "Oh, what happened? Why did Nashville trade Lucas McNaughton?" But you can't base your roster off of that. You have to raise some GAM, as we saw and we talked about earlier. And this was one of the highest assets that wouldn't put your team back, and that's what Nashville SC ended up doing.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things where, from a fan perspective, obviously Lucas McNaughton, when he did play for Nashville, was performed extremely well and earned his spot. And he's going to go to a team like DC United, and he's going to start if he's able to be healthy, because their defense is terrible, and he will start as a starting center back, and it'll be really good for them. But in a team like Nashville, Valera, I think you said it best. This is a ruthless business. This is a business. We can have somebody that we like, but in the end of the day, you got to do what's best for the team. And Nashville felt that this was best for the team and making this move happen. So then when it comes to that, that was a pretty big trade. We kind of expected something like that to happen, needed some money. Everything seemed like it was going to calm down, right? Nope, not even a little bit, because then we learned that Nashville was acquiring a player. Gaston Brugman, we were all extremely excited about that. Nashville going and getting a player in the midfield that they definitely needed. Um, then you realize what it was for, and it was for Sean Davis being traded, which did not get released until a few hours after it got announced that we were acquiring this player. Um, so why is this not just a like for like, Flair or Clay?
Well, Clay raised his hand, so I'll let him go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I mean, we should really at some point talk about the curse of on air with Valaire. Sean Davis is gone. Jack Mayer lost his starting role.
Wait, 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 wait. No, 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 no.
There's only been two. I mean, there's only been two episodes, but like, it is worth pointing out. Like, we can't not point it out, right?
No, you cannot point it out, Clay. You don't have to.
Anyway, to shout out
I,
to Sean Davis who gave me a shout out by name in that show. So
no, Sean Davis, I think I'm going to talk from a personal perspective. I've met him, obviously, a couple of times. We did this show together. We did an episode of the show together and everything. And honestly, one of the most calm, most like just genuinely good people from any athlete you'll ever meet in your life. And I don't mean this as a bad thing. Like, athletes are nice people sometimes, but not all the time. And sometimes there is something that you feel they won't talk to you the same way, or there's some sort of especially
We'll talk
being.
about one of those later.
Oh, yes, we will. But no, I don't know. But especially being, in the media, and there's this sort of sense of like being scared of some questions from media members or whatever it may be. All that said, Sean Davis was the complete opposite of that stereotype. He came in, and when we did the on air with Blair episode, which if you haven't seen, please go and watch it. It was like 45 minutes of just genuine conversation. He never shied away from saying how he felt or the truth and stuff like that. And I really appreciate that. So best of luck to him on the field, on the play. He was never really settled into Nashville on the pitch. And even though he captained the side at a certain point, and even though he was supposed to be this big replacement to an aging core, he then added to the aging core and never really ended up feeling like he was that signing that Nashville SC was making, because Nashville SC splashed a whole lot of money to get Sean Davis. And sometimes these sort of deals don't pan out, and that's clearly what happened here. So I don't think him or Nashville SC were looking for another year of not getting enough minutes, and even when being on the pitch, not really being able to help the team. That said, trading him away to LA Galaxy in exchange of Gaston Brugman and $100,000 in GAM for 2026 is really, really good deal. And I think this is a good deal. It's one of those rare deals where it's good for everyone involved. Gaston Brugman, even though he was the MLS Cup MVP in 2024, he did not play well towards the end of the season and lost his spot with the LA Galaxy. So the only reason he played MLS Cup was because Ricky Puig was injured. And then he puts on an MVP performance in the MLS Cup final. But before that MLS Cup final, Gaston Brugman was talked about as somebody who would be bought out by LA Galaxy. That was kind of the level he was being talked about. Now, he also had been pretty solid for them 2 seasons before, so I don't want to, cast any sort of misconceptions here, but that was the situation going into MLS Cup final. Then he has that performance, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about Gaston Brugman. LA Galaxy do not have the money or the GAM necessary. As Steven mentioned, they have even less than Nashville to continue to buy down Gaston Bergman's contract of $1.4 million. So, in order to kind of get over that, they got someone who's cheaper, who can still play in midfield. That is Sean Davis. That's a solution for them. For Nashville, they wanted somebody who can move the midfield forward and have good ball progression and also just upgrade in terms of the midfield, even if that meant paying him a little bit extra, and they got Gaston Brugman. Now, the one thing that's going to hold Nashville back a little bit is that they still maintain a little bit of the cap hit that Sean Davis has until he serves the rest of his contract. So they're not completely free of the Davis contract. They still have to maintain a little bit of the cap hit. But that, considering that they got Brugman in exchange, that is a risk that I think Nashville SC and every Nashville SC fan would take to ensure that they have the right quality in Nashville's squad.
So what you're saying is that Gaston Brugman was LA Galaxy's Randall Leal.
Yes, but if Randall Leal
with less injuries,
if Randall Leal did not get injured,
yeah. But I do think
true.
obviously I'm being a bit of a smartass there, but I do think it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Because if he is the player that he was 2 years ago, it's hell of a good value for Nashville. And if you take that into account with, the the enigmatic Randall Leal, I think that you have two potential pieces that significantly could raise Nashville's ceiling for next season. And if you were to sit here and say, like we talk about at the beginning of every season, what would make Nashville a good team, a contender going into next year? These are two worthy gambles. You're not you we kind of, I don't want to say hoped, but we thought that buying out Randall Leal would be a potential option for NSC, and I guess in theory it still is. But those are two guys that, if they are healthy, if they are playing well, significantly raise the standard of your play throughout the field. With Hani Mukhtar, you've got those two in midfield. There are potential ways that you could see a very interesting turnaround from this Nashville squad. And it is players like a Gaston Brugman coming into the squad, maybe under a different manager, maybe just in a good situation, maybe just needed a shakeup. Sometimes people just need a shakeup and they do well afterwards. Look at Jacob Schaffelberg, look at Lucas McNaughton, guys that weren't really that interesting in Toronto came to Nashville and were regular starters and good players and maybe looking for moves elsewhere in the case of Jacob Schaffelberg. So this is not the same level because it's somebody who's at a higher level that's coming into Nashville, but it's the same type of move where maybe that shakeup changes everything for them going forward.
And I do think it's important to note that the contract Nashville is inheriting is not long term. So Gaston Brugman is guaranteed through 2025 with a club option for 2026, which means that if Nashville pay him, he plays 2025, and for some reason doesn't perform, Nashville are not obligated to pay him or give him a contract past 2025. And that is a really, really favorable position for the club, because if he does perform and he does well, they can trigger that option at any time, and he's guaranteed through 2026 for the same exact price. So kind of similar to the Drew Yearwood one from last year in terms of 1 year trial run. If things work out, the only difference here is that there is a club option, which makes it even easier for Nashville SC.
And then let's say he performs great and then goes into 2026 and then the Qatari stars come in and then suddenly it just ruins your whole season. Maybe that could happen.
Well, I think it's just different.
The club option.
I think it's different from a Nashville perspective as well, because we're used to Nashville making a lot of safe options in the offseason of, hey, these are safe moves that could probably help this team, but will they get them over the hump? Maybe, maybe not. This one's a little bit different. This one's a little bit more of a risk where this could, like, you're giving Gaston the midfield, right? He doesn't necessarily have any competition in his spot right now.
I don't agree that this is like Nashville's typically a team that moves safe. I don't think Nashville does make safe moves. I think they make some safe. They acquire players that are in theory safe players to acquire, but Nashville has always moved a little bit weird. Like whether that's getting Alistair Johnson without a backup, like without somebody there's a backup plan, whether it's moving Dave Romney on to gamble it on Jack Mayer. Nashville has been riskier than they've gotten credit for building their roster. But yeah, I would agree in terms of acquiring players within the league. Nashville tends to operate in a way that feels safe. Sean Davis is the reason why that doesn't always work because that seemed like something that's a perfect fit. And then he got to Nashville, and it just never fit. So Nashville's moved a little more shrewdly than they get credit for, in my opinion.
So looking at the midfield, I do think it's important to kind of look at the midfield at the moment with Gaston Brugman, Patrick Yazbek, and Taxeth. Those are the three that Nashville have. Those are barring Patrick Yazbek, who played, a handful of games pretty much. That's a brand new midfield for Nashville SC. And that, you're right, Stephen, that is not what Nashville SC have done in the past. I think at this point, this is as close as a full reset you can have for the squad without changing the DPs, which I don't think Nashville is changing or can change, to be honest. So it's pretty close to a full rebuild without using that term specifically, just because the DPs are sticking around and most of the squad is kind of sticking around.
Speaking of just Nashville moves, normally Nashville also has, put value in the super draft. But one of the things that we did predict as well, just in the need for money specifically, was trading away our sixth pick in it, which we did end up doing for 150,000 in general allocation money. Yeah, we made two picks. Do we need to go in? I don't think we need to go in detail about them. I don't know if we'll ever hear their names again.
I'll go ahead and say their names here so they at least get a mention. Yuan, Ka, and Ethan Balik. I think that's how you say it. They were both picked. Chances are they will, like Steven said, will probably not be signed. But who knows? Look, sometimes these things pan out for these players, but good for them for getting picked and wish them best of luck.
And then look, I mean, we both had we all had our holiday time. We all had a nice time with the family. We get to relax, come into the new Nashville SC season, the new year with no more, like we've already had a big time, right? All the news has happened. Let's just enjoy this time. No, that did not happen. Nashville then traded Shaq Moore away to FC Dallas for up to $150,000 in general allocation money, 50,000 right away, which I believe is the case. Seems like a small number, but why is that a small number, Valer?
It's mainly because of the salary that Shaq Moore has. So Shaq Moore is an upward of $800,000 guarantee per year, which means that not only his salary is obviously that hit the cap, it hits the cap with his salary, but also that means Nashville and now Dallas will have to buy down his salary to make it compliant with the cap. So what that meant is that Nashville SC was spending a whole lot of GAM and a whole lot of actual money for Shaq Moore. And now he is a player on the fringes of the national team. I don't want to take any credit away from him. I thought he had a pretty good season in Nashville in 2024, all things considered. He was far from the problem for Nashville SC, but he wasn't the solution either. Now, when you're paying a right back that much money, you're expecting them to have some sort of an impact, whether it's Kai Wagner with Philadelphia Union or someone else on a cheaper contract all around the league. Shaq Moore wasn't having that sort of performance, that sort of impact on Nashville SC. And I think that's what led to this, because Nashville need the GAM. He is one of the highest earners of the club. They need to change something at the top, and he was one of the dominoes that fell for them.
You're not spending high value money on a fullback who doesn't give you anything going forward. And I think that Nashville expected Shaq Moore to be, putting up good assist numbers, getting good crosses in. Obviously, it's a different system too, to keep that in mind while we're talking. But Shaq Moore, I think, brought a lot of value defensively that was overlooked. I think the games that Shaq Moore didn't play, you could tell defensively from Nashville. And I think that that part was kind of overlooked because he was so lacking going forward. Because when Nashville signed him, he was expected to be the best crosser in the league. Like that is the way that he was talked about. And you're sitting there as a Nashville fan, like, oh, well, Nashville has size, Gary Smith loves to send in crosses. Like, we all know that. And he didn't really rack up big assist numbers. And you didn't really miss him on the offensive side when he didn't play. Now, I think there's something to be said defensively, but you don't pay that money for someone who doesn't put up numbers on the other side of the field, even as a defender. And I think that that's just worth keeping in mind. He's a good player. I really hope he does well at SC Dallas. I think that he gets a lot of unnecessary stuff thrown his way by people who don't care about watching games on the national team level. I think he gets a lot of flack that he doesn't deserve for the caliber of player he is. But it just doesn't make sense from a spending money standpoint for building a roster in MLS to spend that kind of money on Shaq Moore.
And I think it's important to look at the end of last season and to look at what BJ Callahan was doing when he didn't use Shaq Moore, and that was putting in Julian Gaines, who was a youth player playing for Huntsville mostly last year, but ended up playing for Nashville a good amount. And he was one of the few youth players who got the opportunity to play for Nashville under BJ Callahan consistently. Now, a lot of them made the bench pretty consistently, but Julian Gaines actually played a good amount of minutes for someone who was mainly with Huntsville beforehand. So that I highly, highly, highly doubt that Julian Gaines is the plan going forward at the moment. However, I don't think I think his minutes are going to increase, and I think Nashville is going to make another signing there at right back where he will be competing with Julian Gaines rather than someone who is at that 800,000 level or above, where they are pretty much guaranteed to be a starter, or else you're wasting your money.
Yeah, I think Clay, you made a really good point just with the offensive production, but I think the end of last year, I think you saw his regression in the defense as well. I think there was a lot of moves last year defensively that he just was not in the right position, and it didn't necessarily seem like he fit in this lineup. And I think this is where it comes from. And I tweeted about this specifically. There are two players that BJ Callahan has mainly worked with before even coming to Nashville SC. One of them was, and they both were brought to the World Cup. That's Walker Zimmerman and Shaq Moore. If BJ Callahan going forward feels like one of those players is not necessarily going to, like, this move to me has BJ Callahan's stamp all over it, that he's looking to proceed with this team in a different way instead of just players that he knows and is comfortable with. So I think it's good for Shaq Moore because of the fact that he goes back to where he started his academy play. I think it's good for Nashville SC to free up some money because it does free us up closer to 1.5 GAM, correct? Based on buy down efforts and all that type of stuff.
Around, yes, I don't know the exact figures, but a good amount, let's just say.
Something around there. It does free up Nashville to kind of go find somebody different in that right back spot or give the ability for Julian Gaines to earn his spot. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Nashville does do with that money freed up. And I think it's a move that we're going to see how it ends up, in the long run.
And it is worth noting, like, just how important GAM moving around the league is within the league. That is the primary way that people get traded, as we've seen. A million in GAM, let's say there's a million free in GAM. Typically, that can land you an all-star level player. Like, it has landed defensive players of the years. It has landed like guys that have been in the mix for MVP. Having that in reserve can be really, really important when you move in to January and February, when people start figuring out what players they are and aren't using. So a lot of teams, especially a team like Nashville, are going to be sitting there going like, we need to keep some money in reserve just in case somebody becomes available, like a Gaston Brugman that is attainable with the level of GAM that Nashville has.
GAM is effectively more important than actual money in MLS, like by all accounts. So I just want to make sure we're clear that not only can you trade players with it, you can buy down the contracts with it, and you can obviously trade it, which is something that you can't do with the real actual money in MLS currently. Steven, do you want me to give you like a little outlook on what Nashville has currently in GAM?
Oh yeah, if you want to, I think
Okay.
just a small understanding, just based on, I think quickly, just to get an
Yes.
understanding.
Yes. So one of the things that also is part of all of this is that there is a max discretionary TAM that you can apply to players' contracts as well. So Nashville's actual salary numbers for 2025 currently is looking at around 19 million. First of all, thank you to Ben Wright and Armand from Back Heel for getting these numbers together because I get lost in these numbers. So currently it's 19 million for 2025 real actual salary. However, only not all of that gets part of the cap. So about the charges towards the cap is about 9 million. So that means there are about all these numbers considered. The starting GAM for the year for Nashville C was 2.5. They've acquired about 425,000 of it. And with the discretionary TAM that's available for them as well, and the buying down of the contract, it is perceived that Nashville should have around 1.7 million in GAM available. That is with buying down the contract for players, meaning that 1.7 could be spent on trades for Nashville, and I doubt that whole amount would be spent. I doubt they would go into the season with anything less than probably a million or so in GAM in their pockets, just in case they need to make moves and changes. But expect some of that to be spent, and that is a substantial amount. 1.7 million of available current GAM is very much a substantial amount. That's not something to be scuffed at, and Nashville can do serious business with that. We'll have to wait and see what that serious business looks like.
So obviously, a lot of moves in the past couple of weeks. The start of BJ Callahan's first off season. Is Nashville done?
No, I think I think just based on this, they're still short in terms of players. I definitely see them making a right back signing. I can see them making another center back signing because if you recall, they only have three center backs currently on their roster, with Applewhite coming from Huntsville and signing a homegrown deal, making it four. I don't think he's ready for MLS. I don't think they think he's ready for MLS, meaning that there's probably a fourth center back being signed. There's a right back, like I said, of borderline starting quality, maybe competing with minutes with Julian Gaines, who they do view very highly, by the way, Julian Gaines. And I thought he looked really positive coming on. I can definitely see another center mid signing. So if I had to guess, I would say at least two more incoming players for Nashville SC. I think ideally, if I was running this, I would look to add 3 to 4 players. One in midfield, two at the back, and maybe another forward as well.
So, with that, I mean, there was an episode. That was the year. It was a crazy end to the year. We wanted to make sure that we kind of got our thoughts and opinions on these moves before everything started. Um, do you think, I just real quickly before I kind of get into plugs and all of that, based on everything that has happened, is Nashville in a better position, worse position, or about the same, in your opinion?
Let me watch like the first 3 months of the season. Let you know. How about
I
that?
don't know. I want your opinion right now based on what has happened.
I think based on the hand they were dealt, they are in a better position. However, the hand they were dealt is a hand that they built themselves. So yes, it's better looking already. It's still not ideal, and the reason it's not ideal is because some mistakes that happened in the past.
Uh, I think that it's probably about the same entering the season as it was entering the season last year. I do think that the ceiling is higher, but I also think the floor is a lot lower. I think last year, I do think that last year, like they kind of obviously they underperformed, but they underperformed on the basis of what they had significantly entering last year. And I think that there's a potential there's a lot of ifs that we have to say. If Julian Gaines can be a full time right back, or whoever they bring in can be a full time right back, if Gaston Brugman can be what he was 2 years ago and not what he was most of last year, there's a lot of ifs there. But if they do come off, this will be a lot better team than it was last year. And I think that's a worthy risk and that's a worthy gamble. And if you're a guy like Mike Jacobs, who maybe isn't fully on the hot seat but feeling the heat, like these are the types of gambles that you would want to be making. Proactive moves to turn over a roster and see if you can get it right. And I think Nashville has been doing that. So I think entering the season, they've got a much higher ceiling, but the floor could drop out easily if a couple guys get hurt.
So Clay, are you excited? You said you just wanted one signing.
Yeah, no, very much so. Very
Okay.
much so. Like Brugman is that kind of signing. And the moves that they've been making, like I just said, like it's proactive. It is trying to fix the problems in the squad, which I don't necessarily think that they have made those types of moves over the course of the offseason. I think they've made moves to set up to fix the problem in July. And
That's true.
this has not been that offseason. They have been moving quickly to try and plug holes and try and make things work so they can have a plan going into the season. I've not really felt like Nashville's done that in at least a couple years going into a season. So very much excited.
Yeah, thank you guys so much again for listening to this show. Hope you guys got a bunch of information on these new signings and where Nashville is currently at and what's coming forward. Valair, give me your plugs, and then I want you to predict what position Nashville SC's next signing will be in. What position specifically?
I will give you this. If you go to Blue Sky and you search up Valair, Valair, you'll see a bald man. Hit follow on that. And if you're not on Blue Sky, you're like, ew, Blue Sky. You're like, I'm a Twitter. I'm not gonna call it by its actual name. That's ridiculous. I'm a Twitter truther. This is where I go. Also do the same. You'll find me. And then on Instagram, you can find me. On TikTok and YouTube, you can find me. So just search my name and follow everything you can follow, because that would be very much appreciated. Also go to kickinit615 ki615.org and at kickinit615. We do a lot of great work and we would appreciate your help with that. All that said, I think Nashville's next signing will be, you know what? Another central midfielder. Why not? Let's just do it. Switch it up a little bit. Another central midfielder, maybe a defensive midfielder, but someone who can play in that midfield. Maybe Paul Pogba. Who knows? That would be kind of where I'm going with this.
Clay.
Okay. Just a maybe Paul Pogba at the end is very
Yeah,
funny.
like a 4DP type of thing, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
it can work,
Blaze
right?
Matuidi.
Yeah.
You can check me out at Clay Lasso on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm still very much more active on Twitter than all of them. Although it's getting a little bit weird on there these days. I will say that also check out National Soccer Archive. If you have anything you'd like to donate to National Soccer Archive, please reach out to me and we can go ahead and get you slated in at Vanderbilt University Special Libraries to add to the collection. For my prediction, I think they're going to sign a right back. I think they have to. Right now, the backup right back is the third center back. So I think that that'll be where the next signing is. So I'm going to go with that.
At PHStevenHD on my Twitter. I need to get on Blue Sky. Valair, do you still have the same problem? Is there the Rust streamer that is on Blue Sky when you search Valair? Because when you search Valair on Twitter, it's the Rust content
Oh, never
creator.
mind. No, on Blue Sky it's just me. I forgot about that on Twitter.
But as I mentioned before we started, please go to pharmasoccer.com, check out our new merch, check out all of that. It's really cool stuff, really cool, nice little rebrand. So please check that out. I need to get a Blue Sky. I really need to do that. But just based on the way that Nashville has been, and it's been a wild offseason to start, I'm going to say Nashville is going to sign a goalkeeper next. Do I know why? No, but I'm going to go goalkeeper because that just seems like a really, I don't know, it just seems like a thing to do. Hope everybody enjoys their new year. Hope everybody enjoys their time. We will see you in 2025. Pharma Boys, we are here. I've never ended
Buy
with that.
merch.
Buy stuff. Thank you again so much. Have a great new year, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks.